It's time to put your health in your own hands. Get ready to learn from today's top health and wellness innovators and thought leaders on Optimal Health Radio. Now, here's your host.
Hi, this is Tammy Patzer, and I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Eileen Meagher. Eileen is a gifted energy healer who connects people and animals with the life force in nature to enhance their health and well-being, to prevent illness, help eliminate existing problems, and heal systemic toxicity. After meeting Guruji Mahendra Trivedi and joining his Healer's Mastery Program, Eileen truly discovered and developed her gifts. Her healing abilities have been scientifically validated using cell-based and mouse models on overall health, quality of life, skin health, and vitamin D3 absorption. Today, she supports individuals in transforming the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual aspects of their lives. She is passionate about utilizing holistic healing for leading people out of suffering and into fulfillment. Eileen feels immensely blessed to serve the source of creation in advancing the health and well-being of our world. Welcome, Eileen.
Thank you, Tammy. Delighted to be here.
This is a really exciting time for us, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit more about the Trivedi effect and life force energy, and then let's dive right into our focus today, which is all about anxiety disorders. So can you tell me a little bit more about energy and the Trivedi effect?
Well, yes, the Trivedi effect is a wonderfully new energy that's come on this earth and that can do amazing things. There is the regular energy of nature, which is a powerful energy. It helps plants to grow. It helps crops. It helps animals. It helps us as human beings. And most of the regular therapies that people use to help themselves might be called conventional therapies, where one uses the energy of nature. The energy of nature, the energy that the entire universe is made of, cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. No one can add to it, and no one can take from it. So it's a wonderful, wonderful energy. It's as if we are all living in an ocean, and we are partaking of the benefits of this ocean. We can't breathe without energy, and everyone alive in this world is breathing the ocean of this energy in and out. That's what keeps us well, that's what keeps us healthy, and that's what keeps us alive and keeps us living a fulfilling life. There are times when we run into major, major problems. And of course, doctors and Western medical help are profoundly important in that area, where they can help with surgery, etc., and many times with medications that hide symptoms. But in the latter, with the hiding of symptoms, the energy really doesn't get to the root of the problem. And what the Trivedi effect does is get to the root of the problem. It's like an energy that comes directly from the Creator. So it's an energy that's before and behind the energy of nature. It creates the energy of nature. And in 1995, Mahendra Trivedi was gifted with the ability with this energy, to use this energy to do unbelievable things, with miraculous things with people, plants, and crops. And he has been tested in so doing by laboratory science And the results of his work, of course, are published in jury journals and available on the websites of just about every major university in the Western world, in the English-speaking world, all over the world, in fact. This Trivedi effect, Mr. Trivedi has generously given to a number of us who joined his Healing Masters program. And after a number of years of getting that particular energy from him, of receiving what we call energy transmissions, we are now gifted to, not as strongly as Mr. Trivedi, but we are gifted to transmit this energy to people, animals, and plants, and to help with their overall well-being, their happiness, their general health, and so on. And we have been tested, our abilities have been tested in laboratory science, just as Mr. Trivedi's has. And our work is also published in jury journals. And in my own case, for example, and in the case of my colleagues, you can find the results of that testing on my website by clicking on the science link there. So we are very blessed and very grateful to be able to, shall we say, participate in this major breakthrough in science, forging a whole new area of science that introduces an energy that scientists in the Western world are not familiar with. To some extent, there's a little bit of familiarity with it in the Eastern world, but not as deeply as, of course, Mr. Trivedi has made us familiar with it. And in the Western world, the scientists who have tested Mr. Trivedi and tested us and our abilities, they just don't know what to do. They don't understand how we can accomplish what we accomplish. But what they don't deny is that they see the results of the power of this energy in their labs, in their tests, and so on. So they are now working as hard as they can to understand what is this energy? What is it all about? How can it do what it does? And it does amazing things. Mr. Trivedi's over 4,000 science experiments have shown just how amazing those results can be. So our world is blessed, really, to be able to partake of this energy, to use it to help ourselves, to help others, to help the whole world, in fact, to help in the development of healthy and better nutraceuticals, and to help out the whole pharmacological industry with getting better results, namely in eliminating systemic toxicity. All of the medications that we get, or most of them, have powerful side effects in the Western world. And pharmacologists have been trying to eliminate those effects without much success. And what this energy does, amazingly, is eliminate those side effects. And what a gift that is, what a power that is. So the Trivedi effect has introduced into our world an amazing new science. It has broadened the boundaries of regular Western science and Eastern science and all of science to include this brand new development. And we look forward immensely to the great miracles, to the great results that will accrue definitely in the months and years ahead.
That really is very phenomenal, the power of this life force energy. But of course, if you think about it, if it's coming from the Creator, of course, all things are possible. So I understand that with the energy transmissions, generally people either immediately or over time have some positive effects on them, on their lives. And one of the things that many people have reported is related to anxiety and those types of feelings that we have. Can you tell me a little bit more about anxiety disorders and how widespread it is around the world?
Yes, anxiety disorders are probably the most common mental health disorder in the world at large. The World Health Organization testifies to that in its studies, and the Center for Disease Control and also the National Institutes of Mental Health report on just how widespread this particular quote-unquote disease is. Now, there is a milder form of anxiety that's called GAD, General Anxiety Disorder, and it is experienced by about 7 million people just in the USA. And usually the symptoms of that are, and we can all relate to this, a habit of worrying. We feel we're losing control over our future. We tend to think that we are unable to do certain things, to make certain things happen in our future, and we worry about that. And we worry about our inability to cope sometimes with the problems that come up. And we focus on that. What we found out is that a lot of this anxiety, whether it's general anxiety disorder or some of the other major kinds of anxiety disorders, start in one's youth. And that there are certain risk factors that usually bring about that anxiety. For example, temperamental traits. A child may just be naturally shy. And that shyness, if it's not worked with, and if the child doesn't get healthy exposure to presenting himself or herself, that shyness can morph into a strong and severe anxiety disorder. Stressful events in one's youth can also lead to anxiety later on. And usually the scientists say and the doctors say that they begin to notice symptoms of anxiety developing more prominently at ages 13 and up, 13, 14, and 15, the beginning of the teenage years. Many times there is a history of anxiety in the family, in the parent or a grandparent or wherever. So a person may inherit a tendency to be anxious. And then there are physical conditions that can exacerbate anxiety and add to it. For example, problems with one's thyroid or with one's heart, and indeed even mild problems like arrhythmia, although that's not mild for those who are experiencing it, but problems such as that can lead one to worry a lot, to be more anxious, and that anxiety then tends to spread into other parts of one's life. Even caffeine, stimulants like caffeine can contribute to anxiety. I remember when I first came to this country, I was told I couldn't be a real American if I didn't drink black coffee. And I thought, just watch, I'm going to be a real American. So I started drinking black coffee. I loved the smell. I loved the taste. I loved everything about black coffee. But I noticed when I had a cup of that in the morning, by noon, I had a very strong headache. And it took me a little while to see the relationship between the two. So I stopped taking coffee at noon. And I thought, all right, I will take a cup of coffee around dinner time, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. And that will, by the time sleep comes around, going to bed comes around, that will have gone through my system and I will be okay. But what I found was that when I began taking my cup of coffee around 5, 6, 7 o'clock, I began to develop a speeded up heart rhythm, and I couldn't get to sleep at night. I would just wake up and my heart would be pounding. And I didn't know what that was. And it took me a while. It took me, I think, a year to figure out that it was directly related to the coffee that I was drinking. So I stopped drinking black coffee. And even though I had grown up with occasional coffee in my home country in Ireland, we always put cream in the coffee or whatever, and the magnesium in the milk or the cream tended to blunt the caffeine. So, and it was an after dinner drink. It's not a drink that you had a whole lot of. So it was like a little liqueur after dinner. You took the black coffee with some cream. But what I found out was when I was able to relate my black coffee in the United States to anxiety, to the problems I was feeling, to the headaches and to the beating heart, when I stopped taking the coffee, those problems went away. And as a result, I didn't have any more. I could sleep better. I didn't have any more headaches. And one of the things that I was a little bit disappointed with was that I just love the smell of coffee. I love to see it perking in the morning. I love the sound of it and all of that, but I couldn't partake of it because I knew immediately what it would do to my system. So there are other stimulants like coffee, certain over-the-counter medications, and indeed some soft drinks have a lot of caffeine in them, and people can feel jittery and a bit anxious after taking those and not know the reason why. So there are many risk factors that bring about anxiety, from natural shyness to stressful events in one's childhood, to a history of family problems with anxiety, and then to some physical conditions. So we can talk a little bit about, yes, there are 1 in 2 Americans, for example, that suffer from a mental health disorder of some kind, but the major health disorder is anxiety/depression. And usually when a person suffers from depression, they're also suffering from anxiety. So, but what's good to know is that with generalized anxiety disorder, most of us tend to experience some anxiety sometime in life, whether it's preparing for an exam, getting a big dinner ready for a group of people, living with certain people that bother us a little bit, or whose habits of whatever bother us. That can begin to generate a bit of anxiety. And if we don't look into that and correct it, we can end up with a more severe anxiety disorder. And the other severe anxiety disorders are OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, where people have to have things in a certain order. The dishes have to be lined up in a certain way in a cupboard, in the closet or whatever. One has to go back and check and see if they locked the door over and over again 10 times. That's being obsessive, that's being compulsive. And of course, at the bottom of that, the scientists say, is a type of anxiety. Of course, we know that another major type of anxiety disorder is panic disorder. And that's the fear of open spaces, the fear of closed spaces, agoraphobia, all kinds of agoraphobia. And the basic emotion there is what I just mentioned, fear. And that fear can get to the point where one feels like one is going crazy. I have to get out of this situation. And the anxiety level is so high that if one doesn't get out of that situation, one can begin to sweat profusely, the heart begins to beat wildly, and one knows that one has to do something to get out of that situation. Going up, for example, in an elevator really fast, or going up slowly. If one has a panic disorder and doesn't like closed spaces, then just riding in an elevator can make one very disturbed, can make one very unhappy, can make one very ill at ease. Other types of anxiety would be post-traumatic stress disorder, what our military people experience once they leave the military, where they've been exposed maybe to heavy noises, bombs going off, IEDs going off close to them. And as a result, and this happening over and over, triggers in them a very strong response that throws them into an anxiety that's difficult for them to control. They feel like they've lost control of their life. They don't know what to do next. They just want to lie down on the ground. They just want, if there's medication around, give me the medication right away to quell my nerves so that I can at least begin to operate, at least begin to do my regular chores day in, day out. But post-traumatic stress disorder is a severe one among vets. We know among those coming from the military, but not just among vets. Post-traumatic stress disorder, you will see that in people who have suffered abuse, severe abuse in childhood. You will see it among abused women. You will see it anywhere there has been a great shock to one's system. And then when one meets that same incident again, there is the tendency to respond as one initially did, by blanking out, by sweating, by getting that strong heartbeat, by feeling, I have to get out of here. And also that can be behind a panic disorder, where one simply, it has to do with loss of control. I can't control these feelings, these emotions, so help me. And usually the help comes there with some kind of medication. And then there is what we call, by the way, with panic disorder, we have about 6 million people in the United States who suffer from that. And from general anxiety, there are a whole lot of us, about 7 million. And then there's social phobia, which is an anxiety disorder that about 15 million people in the United States, both men and women equally, suffer from. And that social phobia, again, has to do with, I don't like to be in the middle of large crowds. I don't want to hear a lot of noise. I want to be where it's quiet and peaceful. I want to be alone. And you will find that people who have this kind of anxiety disorder tend to become loners, tend to be more at home in their own company, or with just one other person that they're very comfortable with. They just don't like their regular stuff that they do, their regular course of life, to be interrupted by quick events, large events, crowded events, and that kind of thing. For example, here in Chattanooga, we have an event every Friday during the summertime where there's a lot of wonderful music played and everybody shows up. And I used to go to that. I really enjoyed that. And people would dance and so on. But then a lot of young men who ride motorcycles started coming. And they would make this incredible noise. And for me, it was no longer enjoyable. So I stopped going. I really don't want to say anything negative about motorcycle riders.
But I get that. The vroom, vroom, vroom.
Yes.
Scary. So anxiety disorders are literally, they range the gamut of being anything from social anxiety, which I think all of us feel that every now and then, about, we go to some place and it's just uncomfortable because of, like you said, maybe it's the loudness of the noise or the rumble or the type of energy that the people are giving off in a certain place, or that daily anxiety of being afraid to go somewhere because you just feel those feelings of foreboding with anxiety, or that fear of, oh no, I'm what's going to happen in the future? What if? So since it is such a obviously a huge problem for millions of people, not only in the United States, but around the world. The Trivedi effect is unique in this, because you mentioned how do normally, what are the normal ways that we treat this is what talk therapy, Western medicine gives medication, and those types of cures or modalities or ways to try to help people to eliminate some of this anxiety. Can you talk about how the Trivedi effect may be useful to people with this type of an issue?
Yes. One of the major problems with anxiety is that the person who is experiencing it is feeling agitated, is feeling certain physical symptoms that are simply very, very uncomfortable, that they're worrying about, and so on. We know from spiritual works and so on, and especially from Mr. Trivedi's teachings with regard to the Trivedi effect and with regard to growing in wholeness and in wellness and getting a closer connection to the Creator, that the most important quality is calmness. That growth in closeness to one's Creator only happens when one is in a state of calmness. And this is the genius, really, of the Trivedi effect. You don't have to do anything, really. In getting the transmissions, the energy calms one at one's source. It begins to calm one down. So one begins to experience a greater calmness in one's life. And as Dharm Trivedi, Master Dharm Trivedi said one time, that life is not meant to be a struggle. It is meant a struggle to be figured out, a puzzle to be figured out. That actually it is meant to be a pleasant or a happy state of being as opposed to doing. Although in the very successful life, one is able to combine those beautifully. But the Trivedi effect starts without any effort on our part, except the normal effort. It calms us. We begin to feel more calm, and we wonder, where did that come from? Usually I'm a little bit agitated when I experience this. And I went through that experience just feeling fine, feeling calm. That's the initial and the overwhelming, really, effect of this life force energy. It calms down one's system. And calming the system, from everything that we've said here about anxiety disorders, that's what gets at the root of anxiety disorders. Calming the system, calming a person, a spirit at its source, calming the mind, quieting the mind. And that can happen immediately, or it can happen over a period of time. And that depends on really the openness of the person, but it also depends on just how willing one is to recognize the problem and gently to work with it, not by force or strain, but simply by noticing, oh, this is where I normally get a bit agitated. I can just decide in this moment to stay calm. And actually, it's the energy, if we've been receiving it, the Trivedi energy, the life force energy, that brings that to mind, that helps us to remember, in this moment, I have a choice. I can react by getting agitated, or I can just be calm and let it be. One of the great hallmarks of anxiety is the tendency to confuse struggle with failure. And we know that every life involves struggles. There is no life, no matter how successful or prosperous it is, that has been without struggle. It's an accepting the struggle, being at peace with struggles, learning from them, using them as a means of growth, that one loses the sense of failure, that one becomes more content, more peaceful, more calm. And that is the key to overcoming anxiety disorder through this life force energy. It's powerful.
That is. I'm with you, and I really understand everything that you're saying. So, if somebody wants to find out more about you, Eileen, how can they do that?
Well, I happily invite them to my website, eileenmeagher.com. My name is spelled E-I-L-E-E-N, Meagher, M-E-A-G-H-E-R, and that's all one word, .com. Or they can email me at eileen@eileenmeagher.com. I also have a Facebook page where you can go. I have myself there as a holistic healer, Eileen Meagher, Holistic Healing, and you can see what I have to say there, and as well as checking out my website.
Before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to add about yourself or the Trivedi effect?
Well, I feel so enormously privileged to be receiving this energy, to have received it over a period of 7 years, and to find myself in the position of being able to help other people. What a gift that is. What a profound gift it is. And I've noticed I'm a different person as a result of receiving this life force energy. I'm stronger. I feel younger. I have more energy. And the old anxiety that I used to experience has dissipated. And now it's calmness, recognizing that for me, the biggest problem was not equating struggle with failure, accepting daily struggles, life struggles, peacefully, calmly, knowing that they're a path to growth, and indeed without them, we don't grow. So the Trivedi effect, this wonderful life force energy, is a tremendous gift, and I am personally deeply grateful. I can never be grateful enough for the gift of this energy, to have received it in my life, and then to be able to transmit it to others. It's really made my life's purpose just blossom and bloom and filled me with a kind of joy I hadn't experienced before.
That's truly beautiful. And Eileen, you are a real gift. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. Everyone, this is Tammy Patzer. Go make it a beautiful day.
Thank you, Pammy.
You've been listening to today's top health and wellness innovators and thought leaders on Optimal Health Radio. To get more solid health and wellness information, visit optimalhealthradio.com.